Hi, hello, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Jenny, and I am a Canadian knitter living in the beautiful northeast of England. We're having a really nice sunny spell right now. And I have two finished garments, two finished cardigans to share with you today, which feels exciting and a bit like, oh my god, that's a lot of knitting, which gives me anxiety. But you know, so let's get right into it. So I should actually start this podcast officially by apologizing for the light, because it is already evening. I have been struggling to find a time when I have enough energy to film this, essentially. The summer always wipes me out, the heat always wipes me out, it surprises me every year, and I've not been having the best time lately, so it's been, I've been wanting to film this for kind of 2 weeks and just haven't had it in me. I finally have it in me today, but it took a long time to get there, so it's evening and we will probably lose the light. I think it's not too bad right now. Depends on how quick I can keep this. I'm never good at keeping things terribly quick, but depending on how quick I am, we may or may not end up with pretty terrible light. So apologies in advance if that happens. Hopefully it won't be too bad. But the first finished object that I have to share with you, I'm wearing. I have talked about this one, I think, a couple of times before. I certainly talked in depth about the construction of this one because I changed it a little bit. So this is the Hesper cardigan by Amy Christoffers, and this is the second Hesper cardigan that I have knit, but I am much happier with the fit of this one. So as a reminder, this is knit out of Estelle Eco Worsted Shetland, and for the black I've used Woolly Knit 4-ply, the British wool 4-ply held double, so that's a light fingering held double to get kind of a DK weight. This is a worsted weight yarn, but I am knitting it at a 22 stitch gauge. So I am, you know, playing around with that a little bit, but it's giving me a fabric that I'm really happy with. And this cardigan, you chop down, fairly standard construction cardigan with a kind of round yoke design where you're doing the mosaic color work, which I love so much. I've also knit the Hesper shawl and may knit another one. I'm a little bit obsessed with this motif. I think it's so clever and well done. But the first Hesper cardigan that I knit, also, well, the pattern has you continue to do kind of circular yoke shaping after you do the motif, after you're done with the mosaic color work, and I didn't love the way that fit on me the first time. If you're interested in that, I talked about it a lot in a previous episode where I would have had, I'm sure the title would include talking about this. So I turned this into a kind of composite. It starts off with the mosaic color work is exactly as written, and then I did raglan shaping afterwards, and I'm so pleased with how this fits. I know that you can't really see how it fits too well on me because I'm just sitting, but I did, for both cardigans today actually, I've managed to take a little bit of video in the garden of me wearing them. I'm not going to promise to do that all the time because it requires me being able to get outside, which is often beyond me, but when I can, I'm going to try to do that because I think it does just give a much better idea of how things fit on the body than me just sitting in the chair where you can't even see the bottom of the garment and you can't see my back and you can't see me moving. So I will aim to do that in the future where possible. After I last spoke to you about this, there wasn't anything terribly exciting about the knitting process with this. I did everything else as I had in my previous Hesper cardigan. Again, this pattern calls for a yarn over, that's the word I was looking for, a yarn over buttonhole. I still have no idea what you call it, but the buttonhole where you do it all in one row and over 3 stitches. So you kind of, you know, do some slip stitches and then you turn your work and you turn it back, and it all works out to be a buttonhole like that. I far prefer that buttonhole. It just feels sturdier to me and you have more control over how big or small you make the buttonhole. So that's what I did there. Otherwise, I believe that this is knit entirely to pattern. I am really happy with it. Oh, the one thing that I did do, and you can see it a little bit here actually, and it's because, I'm sorry, I was trying to remember as I was making notes for myself to record this episode. I can't remember who I was watching who said this, and I wish I could. But I was watching someone and they were talking about how they always knit their sleeves to bracelet length, and then they knit one longer and they really liked it. And I was kind of thinking, oh, I usually knit mine to bracelet length and I haven't knit anything longer in a long time. I wonder if, have I just become complacent? And that's what I do automatically. So I decided to knit these longer. And what I did was I knit the body of the arm, the stockinette part of the arm a little bit longer, but then I also knit the ribbing a little bit longer so that I can fold it back, because I wanted to have the option in case I didn't like the longer sleeves to make it bracelet length. And I am so glad I did that, because I hate the longer sleeves. I really don't like it. I think I always have an idea, like a romantic idea of like the sleeves pulled up while I'm on the laptop, or, you know, doing things to keep my hands a little bit warmer. But in reality, I don't know, I always just feel constricted if I'm trying to do something. I mean, I haven't tried that yet because it's been summer. But even just, you know, just today, like I always feel a bit constricted with it down over my hand if it's a snug sleeve. And if it's a wider sleeve, then it's not giving you that much extra warmth around your hand anyways. But my major complaint is just like trying to do things, trying to live life with the longer sleeves. I obviously, you know, don't do any cooking or dishes or anything like that anymore right now, at least. I'd obviously like to get back to that because of my health. I don't do those things right now. But even just like washing my hands regularly, I find, you know, it's just impossible. Like, you know, even pulling it up, it slips down and I always end up with a wet cuff, and there's nothing worse than a wet wool cuff. Just so anyways, I basically live with these folded up when I do wear this cardigan, which is just fine. And I, you know, I had considered that might be something that would drive me crazy. It was an experiment. I'm glad that I did the experiment. It has reinforced that I like bracelet length sleeves. So that's worked out really well. I put on just some basic black wood buttons and sewed them on with the black held single that I'd used for the mosaic color work, and I'm really happy. Oh yes, one other modification that I did make to the pattern is I wanted the neckline to be, here I'll do this up for you, I wanted the neckline to be a bit snugger. I found the original cardigan about a bit looser on my neck. I like quite a snug crew neck, so I cast on fewer stitches and then increased kind of right away to the number of stitches that you should have cast on for the size I was knitting, and I think that that's worked out really well. I had to play around with it a little bit. I did some math. I found, you know, a length that I thought I would like, and then I did that and it was too small. You know, I just knit the first kind of centimeter to try it out, put it around my neck, was like, I think actually that's going to be too snug. It takes a bit of guesswork since obviously you knit the top ribbing last, so it's a bit of guesswork, but playing around a little bit, I arrived at a number of stitches that I was happy with, and I'm much happier with the way that this one fits around my neck. I know that some people really don't like the neck coming in that tight. That's obviously just a personal preference thing, but I'm thrilled. So in general, I feel like this is, and it's like, I think I discussed that I was kind of hoping for a bit more of a neutral, like it's fun, and up close it's got the really fun motif, but it's obviously lower contrast than my previous Hesper cardigan, and farther away the lower contrast is a bit more neutral. So yeah, I'm really pleased. I think this is going to be really easy to wear, particularly, I mean, it's a bit dark for for summertime wear and springtime wear, but I think once the weather starts getting cooler, I will have cause to wear this a lot. So yeah, I'm thrilled with it. I don't think I really have anything more to say about this one. As I said, I've discussed it quite a bit. I talked a lot about how I did that raglan shaping in a previous episode, so I won't bore you with any of that again, but very pleased. And, oh, I forgot to bring, okay, wait, bear with me, I'll be right back. Okay, sorry about that. I made a note to bring this and then I forgot. But I actually had the energy to go and grab it today, which is very rare, so that's exciting. So I did want to grab this because a couple of episodes ago, I think that I mentioned that I'm no longer planning to knit a basil cardigan for my mother right away. I've just finished knitting myself a basil cardigan as well, another Amy Christoffers pattern, and Mum is really excited about that one. I'm really hoping to knit some garments for other people to slow myself down in my own wardrobe acquisition a little bit, just for my own anxiety. I don't want to project that anxiety onto anyone else. That's a me thing, but I also just, my mom is so sweet and so good to me, and she sews me all sorts of things and has always made things for me. So I really want to, I like the idea of being able to spoil her. And the reason I've decided not to knit her a basil cardigan right away is that for several months now, really, I mean, since kind of last winter, this past winter, when I finished my first Hesper cardigan, every time I wear it when I'm having a call with my mom, she's kind of like, video call with my mom, she's kind of like, that's a nice one. And we've been thinking about colors for her. But my mom is, I didn't think I was going to knit that one right away, because I want to say that my mom is pickier than me. It's not that. It's, I guess, like, she has an idea of what she wants, and she really doesn't want to let me knit her too many things either. I think that I get my anxiety about owning too much stuff, especially too many clothes from my mother. There's some, Puritan lineage in there, some inherent frugalness that she and I could both probably stand to look at a bit more. But so she doesn't want me to knit her too many things, and that means that she's being very deliberate and conscious about what I do knit her, and she's thinking about it a lot, which I think is I mean, I really love, like, that's wonderful. But I've been she was very convinced about what color she wanted, and I have been sending her, I've been on the hunt. I've been sending her all sorts of options, lots of budget options, and after being very, very frugal her whole life, my mom's spoiling herself a bit more, and I'm so pleased that she's spoiling herself a bit more. So I was sending her all these options, and she was like, no, like, none of these are exactly what I want. And I kind of said, well, I found some other things, but they're a bit more expensive. And she's insisting on paying for the yarn for herself so that she can then be as picky as she wants, which is very, very sweet of her. And I did find this secondhand, so it's actually, it's still a fairly budget option for what it is. We got a quite good deal. But I found on Vinted, someone selling a large quantity of knit by numbers by John Arvin, and in their double knit in the DK weight, and it's in this absolutely, I will pick up, I got it in a bag, I apologize, I should have thought to take it out, and I feel like I have mentioned actually buying yarn secondhand a couple of times now, and I've been doing this a lot lately. It's become like almost a separate hobby for me, which maybe I need to keep an eye on. But I did want to mention also that I always do various processes to protect myself from clothes moths, but also from bed bugs. Like we talk a lot about clothes moths in the knitting community. We don't talk a lot about other, I think, even worse things that can come with buying textiles from other places, and not to imply that these are not dirty things. These are not, it's no reflection on anyone else that you protect yourself. It's just these things happen, right? Life is not sterile, though sometimes our capitalist world likes to pretend that is possible. So when I get yarn, I always put it in What I do now is I always put it in a sealed plastic bag, and then it goes either into the freezer, and you should really do your own research about this to make sure that you're comfortable with the various practices, but the best practice that I have been able to find, cited by various museums, this is what museums do to protect their own collections, is you do a freeze for 1 to ideally 2 weeks, then you let it thaw for a full week at least, and then you freeze again. The reason you do the 2 cycles is that freezing originally often kills moth bugs, but it won't kill the eggs. You need to give the eggs a chance to thaw and hatch, and then or you can bake in the oven. Anyways, you look up the specific temperature and how long you need to leave it in and all of that. This yarn has already been treated, but I have been using bags especially because, bless him, my husband does everything for me. He's an absolute... Anyways, I feel terrible about how much he has to do, but he's a real angel, and he's so generous about it, and has no resentment, and has no, anyways, he handles it all with a lot more grace and cheerfulness than I think I'd get frustrated once in a while in his position, just from the fatigue of everything. But one thing that he doesn't love doing is dealing with all the yarn. I think he finds that, keeping track of how long things are, and even if I offer to do the keeping track, he just, not something that, he doesn't like that. So I have been just really, really careful to seal things away and keep track of what has been treated and what has not, which I tell you all because, as I said, as I grabbed this bag is no longer in a super safe, contained place because it has been treated. This yarn is totally safe to enter the rest of my collection. I've been keeping it in the bag just because, it was protecting it, but you can see that little cat has gotten to it. And I know which one it is. I love them both, but Bede loves to chew on plastic. So, anyways, you don't need to know all of that. Oh, Beady. So anyways, it's the bags that still need to, where the seal really matters, are sealed away in a drawer, so she cannot get to them. But yes, this is my life. But it's this gorgeous color, and it's just so beautiful. So I've done some swatching already, and I have worked with John Arbon wool yarn before, and I've always heard about how beautifully it blooms. I have only worked with their fingering weight, and I did a lace shawl, so I saw that it bloomed, but I think, that's not the best format for really witnessing and understanding and appreciating the bloom. This was fascinating because I'm a tight knitter, but I did a 4mm swatch and a 4.5mm swatch, and Mum and I both agreed, I did this while they were visiting, and Mum and I both agreed that we far preferred the 4mm swatch, and then I blocked them, and we far prefer the 4.5mm swatch because it bloomed so much that it really, it's a completely different fabric than it was before it went in the water. So that was really, I'm so excited to knit this, and I'm so excited for Mum to have it because I think it's going to be just beautiful. This is, so I didn't tell you what the color is, and I'll hold it up again. I apologize for the noise, but I'll hold it up again because this is an older batch of this. Obviously, I've bought this secondhand, and it is from before the ownership of John Arbon changed, so it's the old fiber content. I believe this one is, yeah, it's 100% Falklands Merino. I think that the new owners, who have a fabulous YouTube channel, if you haven't watched it, I would recommend, but they've changed so that it's not purely merino anymore to make it a little bit more durable. But this is, can I find the color for you? Yes, so this is Knit by Numbers 117. And let me see if I can get the color to show for you a little bit. Oh, I think the light is just not going to be good. So I'm not going to promise to take a picture because I haven't been having an easy time when the light is good lately, but I will be knitting this, so I will show you the color and all of its dimension and kind of heathering. I will show you how beautiful this is at a future date. Because it has taken me quite a while to get to a point where I can film this, I was planning, when I originally made the notes for this episode, I was planning on saying, you know, I'm excited to knit this. The yarn is so beautiful. Mom and I are really excited about it. But I'm not planning on knitting it for a while because, you know, now I've knit 2 of these in close succession to one another, and I need to knit something else. I need some other patterns to keep my mind busy. But now it's actually been long enough that I feel like, I could knit another one of these again. So, I'm working on some other things that are a bit more complicated and involved. So actually doing something where it's fun with the mosaic color work and then just a lot of stockinette knitting could be perfect. So in the next couple of episodes, I expect that I will actually be showing you all of this. And Mom and I have discussed, and we're going to do white for the contrast for her. So it'll be this kind of like rusty orange color and white, which I think will look so good on her. So really excited about that. Yeah, I don't think I have anything else to tell you about either this or the Hesper. Yeah, so this has taken precedence over the basil just because Mom is so excited. You know, I kind of said, well, you know, I'm planning kind of 3 projects for her right now, and I said, you know, which of them do you want first? Like, which one are you most excited to wear? And this one won out with absolutely no question. So so that will be done between now and Christmas at the very latest. The second cardigan that I have to share with you is another one that you have seen in progress. I had been planning to change into it, but I have to admit, I've got more energy today, but I maybe jumped up a bit too enthusiastically to go get this. I am feeling it a little bit, so I'm not going to change into I'll just stay in the Hesper. But I did take video of this one as well, so you will be able to see it on me a little bit. I'll share that now. And the color, again, just the camera has a hard time with this color. I apologize. So this is the Bonnie Cardigan by Orlane. I've been saying Sucche. I've recently discovered the Pearlwise podcast by Claire, who's based in Montreal. It's very exciting. I'm from Montreal. I love, you know, she shows little glimpses of Montreal once in a while, and it makes me really happy. A bit homesick, but homesick in a bittersweet way. Why am I saying that? Oh yes, so she's knit quite a number of patterns by Orlane Sucche as well, and she says Orlane Sucche. And I tried googling around a little bit. I had been saying Sucche partially because I found a French Quebecois podcaster at one point who called her Sucche, but the spelling always gave me a bit of pause, and hearing Claire say Sucche, I thought, well, like that could be. So I don't know. All of this rambliness to say I'm not sure how to pronounce Orlane's surname. If you know, I would love to know, because I'm a bit stumped on that one. But anyways, I love her patterns. However you pronounce her surname, however incorrect I am about her surname, I love her patterns. And this one, again, is a case where I am knitting on gauge, which is unusual for me, but what I've done to compensate for my preference for a slightly stiffer fabric, a slightly more durable fabric, is I've gone up yarn size. So this pattern calls for worsted weight yarn, and I have knit it out of Briggs & Little Heritage, which is a Canadian Aran weight yarn. And I knit this right on stitch gauge, but not on row gauge, which I will come back to talk to you about in a moment. And in the color Royal Blue. I can't remember if I'd said that or not. So this one, again, is all done. I just love it. This was, I have to admit, where, you know, this one, when I finished knitting the Hesper cardigan, I kind of thought, that's enough plain stockinette for me. It was a bit boring by the end. I had to push myself a little bit by the end. this one I never found boring. And I never found this one boring just because there are enough kind of thoughtful details all the way through that it never felt like you reach a point where it kind of says, okay, you're done all the fun bits, now just knit stockinette straight, you know? There are very gentle decreases along the side to kind of give it, it's meant to be modeled after a kind of bomber jacket shape. So there's some very gentle decreasing along the side. I believe I shared already, but you do this vertical braid, which was really fun to learn. I'd never done that before. You do a lovely split hem. One other thing that, so Claire from the Pearlwise podcast actually knit one of these as well, and I watched her podcast where she talked about that, you know, after I was almost done this, but she was talking about what a thoughtful detail the bind-offs are in this pattern. And I discussed last time, if you've seen my previous podcast where I talk about this, or a previous podcast, it won't have been the previous one uploaded, but a previous podcast where I talk about this, you will have heard me talk about how I substituted in a sewn Italian bind-off, which is my preferred bind-off in most cases, and, you know, just fumbled my way a little bit through the fact that you have kind of two knit stitches next to each other at most of the beginnings and ends of the kind of ribbing sections. And then I was listening to Claire talk about how beautiful the kind of bind-off and pattern is, and how thoughtful she thought that was in this pattern, because you end up with this kind of framing where you have the kind of the horizontal braid, and then you the bind off in pattern, which gives you just a kind of a little bit of a lip, and so it gives you this kind of frame for the cuffs. So as you can probably tell from me showing you this, I don't know if this was a smart thing to do or not. Maybe I should have been consistent all the way through. I had already finished the bottom of the cardigan, you know, I'd done all of the ribbing, the button bands and stuff like that, the collar. So I'd finished all of that with the sewn Italian bind off, but I hadn't finished off the sleeves yet. And I thought, oh, you know, that is really clever. So I bound these off in pattern, so they're different from the rest of the cardigan. I don't know, maybe consistency would be better, but I was kind of thinking to myself that I wanted to try that for myself, see that for myself. And I also feel like that is the kind of detail that no one but another knitter would ever notice. And even another knitter would only notice it if they were really looking to see if all of your bind-offs matched. So that's what I did. The sleeve bind-offs are different from all the other bind-offs on this cardigan for me, but I did really like that. So if you are thinking of knitting the Bonnie cardigan but have not knit one yet, that would be something for you to consider if you like that. Though maybe, you know, maybe you aren't like me and you listen to patterns more often, and then, you know, you wouldn't have that conflict. I tend to plow it into my own thing a little bit, maybe more than I should. Maybe I should give the pattern a bit more consideration before I make those choices. I think last time I was also talking about buttons and how I had kind of a few different button options. I did end up going with what I thought I would do, which is the, these are handmade ceramic buttons by an artist in Halifax, whose name I am not recalling off the top of my head, but I will add it here. I bought these from Fia, which is a yarn store in Halifax. I bought them online, obviously. And I just bought them, but I do have to add in a but, which is they are unglazed, and I didn't really think about what that would mean until I went to try the cardigan on for the first time after I'd blocked it and then sewn the buttons on. And they are a bit rough, like there's a bit more friction as they go in and out of the buttonholes. And I have this, I always make my buttonholes quite snug, kind of as snug as I can get them, so that then if they stretch is a better word, if they stretch a bit over time, then the button band still sits nicely and the closure still stays secure and all of that. So there is quite a bit of friction as I put the buttons in and out. that causes me a bit of anxiety. I worry that's gonna abrade against the yarn, which is a woolen spun yarn, so a bit more fragile, a bit more vulnerable to abrasion, I guess. But one thing I also did, I find that I did the 3 stitch along one row buttonhole here as well, though in this case that was the buttonhole that was suggested in the pattern, that was outlined in the pattern. And I do find that when I block those buttonholes, they tend to, you know, the stitches really pull in. So I kind of panicked. I kind of panicked after I first blocked it and tried to put the buttons through and was like, oh my gosh, the friction is going to mean, like I made these really tight, as I always do, and then the friction means like it's actually going to be really difficult to put these buttons on. But what I did was I just kind of grabbed the buttonhole at either end and just did a bit of wiggling, and they opened right up and are still snug, but much less snug, and I'm much less worried about pushing the button through. So I think it's going to be fine, but it's certainly something I'm aware of and something I hadn't thought of because I've never used ceramic buttons before, but I've certainly never used ceramic buttons that aren't glazed. So that's something to keep in mind if I were to use them again in the future, which I definitely would. I think they're gorgeous buttons. I really like the buttons. I might try to give myself a little bit more wiggle room. Especially since the friction means that these buttons won't be as liable to slip out if the buttonholes do stretch over time. Lots of thoughtful details. I'm sure I've mentioned this before, but this is a raglan construction, and the increases are knit front back instead of the more like make one right, make one left are more common. But I really like the detail that this has given it. Like, it's just every step of the way there were thoughtful details, and it was really lovely. And then of course there's the collar, which uses short rows to do that kind of classic bomber jacket, more raised at the back than at the front. I was not totally happy with my collar initially. So I mentioned that I'm using a thicker yarn. I'm using the Orlane weight yarn, and that worked absolutely beautifully all the way. Every step of the cardigan, I was happy with my thicker yarn until it came to the collar. And then my collar is just a lot deeper than the collars of everyone on Ravelry who knit with a worsted weight yarn. And I wasn't happy with that initially. And I didn't really notice until I'd completely bound everything off. And I have discussed before about how one major modification I made to this pattern is that I did add a buttonhole into the collar, because otherwise I found the first button just to be a bit low down on the collar. So I, added in my buttonhole, did all of that, knit it, did my sewn bind off. You are suggested to do a sewn bind off for the collar. Finished all of that. Went and tried it on. It didn't have sleeves yet, but I went and tried it on. I was like, oh, it's so thick. And I did consider going back and taking out the last couple of rows of short rows. But I decided to finish the sleeves first and block it and see if a bit of distance changed my mind about it. And it definitely has. I'm happy with it. I don't mind. In fact, I don't notice a huge difference now when I wear it. It's just comfortable and it seems proportional when I'm not comparing it to other people's patterns. But it certainly is because my row gauge is bigger than the row gauge called for in the pattern. So anyways, just something to think about. I don't, usually row gauge is so much more malleable than stitch gauge. Not always, of course, but certainly not in a pattern. If you're knitting one of those garments where you knit from one sleeve to the other, then row gauge is going to be more important, arguably, than stitch gauge. But in this pattern, row gauge really didn't matter for me anywhere, but it did matter in the collar a little bit. So I think I also might have mentioned to one of you in a comment, someone was saying that they love, and I'm so sorry I don't remember who it was, but someone was saying that they love Heritage from Briggs & Little, but are looking for more patterns for it. And I said, oh, I'm knitting the Bonnie and I love it in the Heritage. So I apologize for having recommended it before I finished the pattern because there is just a little bit of a caveat. I'm still happy with it, but it might be something you want to consider. I don't think I'm sorry, I feel like I don't have a ton to update you about with either of these patterns. They're done and I'm so happy with them, and I have been wearing them quite a bit. We've been having another cooler spell, which is quite nice, so I have had opportunity to wear them around the house and in the garden a little bit. But I kind of did all of the exciting bits and all of my modifications and all of that earlier on in both projects, and so I'd kind of talked to you about all of the exciting stuff already. But it's still exciting to show you the finished objects. So I mean, I am really happy with this one. The color really kind of flares on the camera. It is very bright in person, but it's not quite that electric royal blue, but I do really like this, where it is, even though it is a thicker cardigan than this one, it feels a bit more summery to me just because of the pattern, and I've been really enjoying, I don't know, I've just been putting this on to knit in my room, you know. I'm making an effort. I can't always get out of my pajamas. Not that I can't, I'm not always up to getting out of my pajamas, but I make an effort to at least put on a hand knit cardigan most days just to kind of lift my mood and make me feel like I've gotten out of bed, or even if I haven't gotten out of bed, if that makes sense. And this has been a real mood lifter, so that's been good. We are really losing the light now, but I don't have too much more to talk to you about, so hopefully we'll just about make it. But finally, I just wanted to share a whip with you, my current active whip. The only thing that I'm really working on, I have not been up to knitting the last few days, so this I kind of worked on this in a flurry. All of the knitting I'm going to show you was kind of 3 days of knitting. I really was so excited about it, and then have put it down for a little while, but I'm excited to pick it up again. And this is, shall I show you the pattern first? So I think that this probably is I'm going to upload this podcast after following off of the podcast where I show you the first bit of my Roosty Tank by Ella Gordon. To be totally transparent, I have finished the Roosty vest by Ella Gordon. It's done, but I decided to do something a little bit different with that episode, and it just requires a bit more editing. So I suspect that I will actually upload this episode first, but it's a little bit out of order just because of my capacities and editing taking brain power I don't always have and that kind of thing. So after the reason I'm telling you that is because after I finished the Roosty Tank, I continue to be so in love with Fair Isle. I am trying not to replan all of my knitting for the rest of the year. I think actually I need to do some thinking, so it won't all happen right away. But I was really excited, and I wanted to cast on something else that was color work. So I went looking on my library, at the catalog. Obviously I didn't go to the library in person, but I went looking on the catalog. My library unfortunately doesn't have a huge knitting section, which is okay. But they did have this Norwegian knitting book, which my partner very sweetly ran and picked up for me. And I am knitting it is called the Virgin Vest. And I'm going to show you, okay, so there are a few things that really drive me crazy about this pattern. I'm really enjoying knitting it, but let me show you. I'm going to try to show you without, giving you the pattern, just the image. Look at the terrible contrast in that. It's terrible. You can't tell what's going on at all. A little tiny bit. The tiniest tiny bit. Not like I like a low contrast colorwork vest, but not for the sample image, not for the image that's supposed to show you what's going on and help you decide if you want to knit it or not. That just doesn't work for me at all. So fortunately, it took a few days between me finding this and deciding that I wanted to take it out of the library and my partner going and getting it for me. So fortunately I went and looked at the patterns included in this on Ravelry first, and not very many people have knit this, but the few people who did knit things with a bit more contrast. So luckily I knew before the book came that this was probably the pattern I wanted to knit from this book, because honestly if I just went based off the book I think I would have overlooked this vest. I think, you know, like I wouldn't even have really noticed what's going on with it. But I am really excited. So this book is really interesting because they give kind of quite a bit of background on each of the designers included, and so there's this whole page on Mette Handberg, who was born in Bergen in 1944. She's the designer of this pattern, and so on designing, at the beginning it says, you know, at the technical school I wrote my thesis on Norwegian tapestry weaving. And she goes on to talk about kind of the motifs in the tapestry weaving and this kind of more historical craft in Norway and how it inspires her work. And it really, like, you can see the kind of folk inspiration in the design. So I'll show you my version, which will give you a bit more of an idea what's actually going on than this pattern does. There's also a cardigan, and so it's kind of a set. It comes with there are patterns for a cardigan and a hat as well. And I feel like this one gives a better idea. This one is obviously much better contrast. Hooray! But this one also gives a better idea of why it's called the Virgin Vest. So included in the cardigan there's lettering along the back that in Norwegian, it's in Norwegian, but they give you an English band as well in case you would like to put the English wording on your cardigan instead of the Norwegian. And it says 5 wise and 5 foolish virgins, because and there are, you know, figures that look like virgins on the cardigan, whereas on the vest there are not. So the terminology is a bit more confusing there. So I'm really pleased. I'm enjoying the pattern, but there are a few other things that drive me crazy about it. The first is it's really not size inclusive. It's not size inclusive at the small end or at the top end. There are only 3 sizes for this vest. Sorry, talking about 2 cardigans and then trying to talk about a vest. There are only 3 sizes. The smallest is 40 inches. I think the biggest is okay, it's not quite, yeah, I mean, it's almost as bad as that. The smallest is 38 inches, and the biggest is 43. I mean, that's just shocking. That's just really, really not size inclusive. And this book is not brand new, but it's 2019, so, you know. So that's really not ideal. I am knitting it despite this because it, you know, it is a project that fits really well into my budget. The pattern was free, I've gotten it from the library, and I'm using yarn that I had in stash, yarn that I bought for other projects that I've decided not to do. So it works really well for me in that respect, but it is really shockingly not size inclusive, so that's something to be very, very aware of. The other thing that drives me crazy about this, and I'm going to try to show you just a corner of this so you can see without me violating any copyright or anything like that. So let's see if I can do this. Can you see how tiny those squares are? look at how tiny those squares are. Every time, like, the chart is itty bitty, and I am 34. I had to think for a second. I'm 34. I have very good eyesight. You know, I'm the only person in my family that doesn't need glasses. I am having the hardest time with this chart. I just, like, how does anyone without perfect vision use this? Every time I pull this out, my partner jokes, "Oh, you're knitting on the pattern for ants." It's so tiny, and I do understand, like, it's this big book and they wanted to fit it all on one page. I understand the logistical challenges, but I mean, there just has to, I wish they included a digital copy or something like that so you could at least zoom into it, because it really, like, I'm not having an easy time with it. And yeah, as I said, you know, my vision is a lot better than lots of other knitters I know. So anyways, not loving that. But I am loving the pattern. So let me show you what I've got so far. I'm again using the royal blue, so I'm afraid it is flaring out. The color is flaring a bit. But I'm using, so this is Briggs & Little Sport in the colors royal blue and black. Woolen spun again, which is always nice for color work. And I'm loving the, like it really gives that folk art feel. It's obviously not Fair Isle, it's a different tradition, but Norway and the Shetland Islands, you know, had such a cultural exchange. Anyways, there's such a Norwegian influence on Fair Isle knitting and such a Fair Isle knitting influence on Norwegian knitting. So it still feels in that same vein, and I'm loving it. So this bit, you might be wondering what's going on here. This pattern includes a lot of facings. I've never done any facings in knitting before, so it'll be really interesting to see how this all works. But you start by casting on for the facing. I should say the pattern has you use 3 colors. I'm only using 2. The pattern also has you do like cast on in one color, then change to another color, and then change back to the first color for the facing, but it's all hidden behind. So I don't know, maybe I'm kicking myself in the foot, but I was like, I'm not gonna, like, why change? I don't care enough, so I did it all in one color. But you do the facing, and it's really hard to deal with because it hasn't been blocked yet, and obviously it's just stockinette, so it wants to curl like nobody's business. But then you do a kind of picot edge with yarn overs. Light is making that very hard to see. Maybe you can see it against my hands a bit more easily. Also help if I was folding it correctly. Here, it's inside out, but I think I'm going to have an easier time. Yeah, there you can see the picot edge a bit. So you fold up the picot edge, and then you start on these motifs. So it starts with a kind of band at the bottom with these stripes and a kind of central, kind of classic Norwegian star. I'm gonna show okay. And then the body of the vest is mainly this kind of flower motif with stars going up the top. And it will have probably been very difficult for you to see on the pattern. You might need to wait until I've knit it for you to see, but there are kind of 2 birds facing each other at the top of the vest. And then it's a square neckline. And when you steek the armholes and the neck, you pick up stitches around all of them, knit stockinette for a distance, and then fold it over and tack it down. So one of the projects I was looking on Ravelry, was talking about, it kind of started with, thank God this is done, I never want to knit facings again type of thing. So I am anticipating that might feel a bit tedious at the end to do all of that facing work. But it'll, I'm also excited to do something new, and yeah, I'm really liking the royal blue and the black together. It's reading a bit more dramatic and maybe a bit more impactful than what I normally wear, which in a way is making me feel like, ooh, maybe I won't feel comfortable wearing that all the time. Maybe it'll be more of a like special occasion impactful outfit. But 6 months ago when I did the video about everything I knit last year, I feel like I said a similar thing about my Waiting for Rain shawl, because it's in that gorgeous yarn from Wellington Fibers with a high mohair content, and it has a kind of shimmer and it feels a bit fancy, and I felt like, oh, maybe this is a bit more special occasion, maybe I won't feel comfortable wearing this all the time. And that didn't prove true. It didn't feel as formal when I ended up wearing it all the time, and I really liked the kind of like sheen and what it added to outfits and stuff. So I'm trying to also, like, I don't I don't leave the house very much, so maybe I should just be really fancy around my own house, so I'm trying to quiet the voice in my head that is kind of naysays me being extravagant or making things that I might not get a lot of use out of, you know? There's a part of my brain that really wants everything to be useful, and that just doesn't actually match up with what I think knitting can be, and what knitting, the role knitting is really playing in my life right now is the knitting itself is so useful. It's so good for me. I want to take a bit less pressure off of myself in terms of the finished objects being useful, if that makes sense. So that's going along really well. As I said, I think it's been a combination of things. You know, obviously FI KAL does also require just a little bit more focus than, you know, you have to pay attention to the pattern and stuff. I think maybe I pushed a bit too hard knitting this a bit too quickly. So I'm not working on this right now, but I'm hoping to get back to it. I'll show you, I have already made a mistake where one thing that is a little bit confusing about this pattern is you get a full chart for the front, but for the back you only get half a chart. And I did start this project like 3 times before I finally got it all right. It's not that the pattern is complicated, I should say, but I think just counting was really hard for me that day. I just, you know, I was having a hard time with numbers, and I was having a hard time wrapping my head around things that on another day might have been fine. But on the center back, there's a stitch that is the center back, so you only knit that once and then you turn and you do the rest of the vest. I have put that stitch between stitch markers just to help me remember. But you also have a side stitch on either side that is supposed to be a different color than the rest of the chart. Anyways, it all makes sense when you're looking at the pattern. It sounds a bit abstract out loud, but so I've got a stitch marker on either side of the side stitch as well. I got confused at one point as I was knitting about which was a side stitch and which was a center back. Sorry, I just ran out of battery, so I had to swap in a new one. Anyways, everything I was telling you is probably indication enough that I probably should have been taking a break earlier, but all of this to say, there is a section on the side where this should be black stitches all up the top, but I got confused and there's a section where they aren't black, and I only noticed when it was all done, and I'm not gonna go back. I just don't care enough. I might cover it with duplicate stitch later, but mostly it's on the side. I'm not going back. But yeah, I'm really, really enjoying this. I'm hoping to be able to get back to it soon, but that's been really fun, and I am definitely thinking more about more FI KAL knitting. I think I put in the description notes in that first episode where I talk about the Roosty Tank that Mel of Melmakes Stuff is hosting a Marie Wallin knit along, and she's given a good lead time. It's set to start on September 1st, and I don't know, I wanted to bring this up here because I've never actually done a knit along before, partially because I do usually need some good building up time before I cast most things on. I'm not usually a very impulsive person. I like to think about things pretty pretty hard before I do them. I feel like people are often kind of like bashful about being impulsive, but I feel a bit the other extreme. Like it's not that serious. I wish I could be a bit more impulsive sometimes. So I don't know, I've been thinking about that a lot. I've been thinking about Marie Wallin patterns a lot. I think Marie Wallin's knitting patterns are just gorgeous. But I also feel a little bit like they aren't exactly me, like they aren't necessarily the kind of thing I would wear all the time. Mel has said that she's happy for people to do other things, especially because Marie Wallin is often not size inclusive. But I don't know, like she's given a good lead time. She announced it probably several weeks ago, and it's end of July now. I'm filming this on July 27th. I've lost a lot of my wiggle room. I will be uploading this soon. I think I've lost a lot of my wiggle room by not being super well. But I don't know, it still might not be enough lead time for me, but I guess I wanted to ask if any of you were doing the Marie Wallin knit along, or if you were thinking about it, because I think like the community aspect is what is tempting me. And I don't know, I'm feeling right now like I probably won't, but if some of you are doing it, that might tempt me in. So anyways, let me know what you think, and yeah. But that's everything I've got to talk to you about today. Certainly I will be doing more Fair Isle knitting, whether I end up doing the knit along or not. And I'm really enjoying, Mel is making lots of videos talking about kind of her processes and stuff, and I think she's a really accomplished knitter and you know, a really good knitting educator. I feel like I'm an okay, I feel like, you know, I love teaching, and I feel like I'm quite a good teacher with literature. I'm not sure I'm the best at, you know, I'm not used to monologuing, and I feel like it's a really unusual format for me. I feel like I'm not the best at explaining knitting, but she really is. I'm only comparing us, I should say I'm only comparing us because I have a background in, you know, I did years and years of teaching. That's the only reason I'm comparing us in terms of that, otherwise that would seem a strange thing to do. But anyways, all of that to say, I'm really enjoying those videos, and we'll be definitely following along on her work with that knit along, whether I end up joining it or not. But yeah, I did want to, yeah, let me know if you're doing it. I'm just repeating myself now, but thank you so much for being with me. I apologize, we have completely lost the light at this point, but this was really good, and you know, it always feels good to do something and feel like I'm making a connection and all of those things when I film one of these. It puts me in a good mood for, you know, days afterwards. So I am going to head forward with my knitting, feeling good that I've managed to get this down on my memory card, and will hopefully upload it for you soon. And I hope you are enjoying your knitting, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks so much.